G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Specifically, this one is the review video for the legendary 5-star red hero, Brock, the tribe leader. So Brock is available for summons, as we saw there from the Raiders of the Wasteland Challenge Event portal. This is one that comes around roughly every 16 weeks. It's on a 4-weekly time slot, the challenge event, but it alternates with 3 other challenge events. So you've got 4 events, it's a 4-weekly time slot, so it's roughly every 16 weeks, all things being equal. Brock himself, he's been around for quite a while now. He was introduced during the very first Raiders Challenge event back in April 2020 during version 17 update of the game. The family remained largely unchanged, or completely unchanged really, until July 2022 when Attk started adding some more heroes to the 3 existing challenge events. Then we got one additional hero added in July 2023, and that pretty much rounds out the Raiders family. So, yeah, pretty good decent family. The odds themselves, if we take a quick look at those in the portal, all the challenge events follow the same structure, so there is a 1% chance for a featured event hero, and a 0.6% chance for one of the unfeatured event heroes. So, to put that into a bit of perspective, if you were to go into this portal and do 100 summons, you would have an 80% probability of getting any of the event heroes, whether they're featured or unfeatured. You'd have an 80% probability of getting an event 5-star hero. When we start drilling it down a little bit, on those 100 summons, you would have a 63.4% probability of getting one of the 2 featured heroes, and a 45.2% chance of gaining one of the, 4? Yeah, the 4 unfeatured heroes. To going after specific heroes, so if you're targeting a specific featured hero, it's a 39.4% probability, and for a specific unfeatured hero, it's just a 13.9% probability across those 100 summons. And that last number will also drop off if you add some more heroes into the portal in the future. Let's flip straight across and we can take a look at Brock's artwork. So I do have a copy of Brock. I actually have a number of copies of Brock. I think he's a quality hero, but this is Brock's artwork. So for a long time, I referred to Brock as my bae. He's got that smoky, sultry look on his shoulder with the shotgun, the bike helmet as well. So I don't know, he just looks like a cool dude. Looks like he'd be a great bloke to have along on a fight, and yeah, I'd follow him, I reckon, if he was my tribe leader. But anyway, that's his artwork, so feel free to pause it, review it if you wish, but we've got a lot of those bikey gang sort of elements going on. As we said, we had the helmet and knee pads, I think is a bit more questionable. Got the tat on the shoulder, the wrist brace things, and then obviously the Raiders family logo, or I don't know what it is, to be honest, on his back of his jacket, flak jacket there as well. So yeah, that's Brock's artwork. You can also actually get Brock's avatar if you place in one of the events. I believe you have to get first place on Legendary to get his avatar, but I'm not actually 100% sure. Actually, we can go and check that straight away. Here, rewards, Legendary. Yep, it is the Legendary first place reward, so you can get his avatar. But anyway, let's jump back across and we can take a look at some more stuff on his card. So he is a member, as we see there, of the Raiders family, which means that Brock has a 10% chance to trigger the Radiation Storm whenever he casts his special skill. The Radiation Storm will apply a 285 over 3 turns healing buff to all allies and a minus 198 HP poison ailment to all enemies. There's also a passive stat bonus for bringing along multiple heroes from the family, so you get a 2, 4, 6 or 8% attack buff when you have 2, 3, 4 or 5 unique Raiders family members in the battle. So 2 things to really note. Number 1, the Radiation Storm does not require multiple heroes. It is inherent to every Raiders hero that you bring, so even if you just bring Brock along, you have the chance to trigger that Radiation Storm with just him in your team. The other thing to note is that for the second part, the stat bonus, they do have to be unique heroes. It can't be 2 copies of Brock to activate that attack bonus. It's got to be 2 different heroes, like combining Brock with Whipster or with Inferno as 2 different examples. In terms of his personal stats, Brock comes in with 770 attack, 597 defense, and 1,376 HP. So we can, obviously, there is a bit of a skew there, going from his defense stat towards his attack stat. I'll just change the colors real quick. So we can see the defense is a bit reduced, attack is a bit inflated, so we've got a bit of a skew there going in that direction. His power as well is worth pointing out. He comes in with 683 power. Now, power is just a representation of the total base stat distribution. So more power equals more base stats. So comparing Brock to some of the more recent heroes, like you've got Topaz coming in at 742. So there is quite a discrepancy, which we call power creep, between some of these OG event heroes and the more modern equivalents into the game. So it is not necessarily a bad thing. It is just something that's worth pointing out ultimately at the end of the day. His charge speed is set to 50, which is classed as average speed. It is actually just inside the 10 tiles to charge bracket of average. So yeah, he does need 10 tiles to charge or 5 ghosted tiles. Because it's right inside the bracket, you do need a speed break at speed 58, so that's a +8 speed improvement, which is actually quite easily achievable in red. You've got 2 5-star speed gun options, both of which give you +9. So there's the Firewing Trig, which is a weapon of the month, but also the Chekhov SVK, which is a vanilla gun. Alternatively, you can actually get there using the 4-star Tigger Happy weapon. That one will give you a +7 speed improvement, but obviously 7 is less than 8, so you do need to combine it with the 2% charge generation node found at +19 on his emblem tree. The double break, not possible, requires getting to speed 65, so that's a 15 speed improvement. 9's the best we've got. So yeah, the class node, I'd generally say it's not really relevant for Brock unless you plan to be either using the 4-star gun or an unleveled 5-star gun. So it will break for +7 if you're running in that setup. So yeah, not generally worthwhile in my personal opinion. His class itself, while we're there, Brock is part of the Assault class, which grants him the chance to wound the enemy, which will apply 60% of the normal damage done over 5 turns. So this is tiles or slash attacks, basically. The wound damage itself can stack with itself infinitely, so you can have multiple copies of wound on the same enemy. It is also classed as bleed damage in the scheme of things, which means that it can trigger the bleed burst from heroes like Ikwani or Hatchet. By way of an actual emblem path, you can probably make an argument to go either direction. You can either go an attack path, or you can go the defense path. An attack route will increase his damage output, but the defense HP path will obviously give him some additional survival and try and alleviate some of his squishiness. So personally, I went the attack path. That's just my personal preference. I'd tend towards giving more more attack to heroes that are attacking in nature. So we can see this is the attacking path that I followed for Brock. You can see I stopped him at +18 because I don't have any value for the +19 node with my arsenal of +9 speed guns. So yeah, that's the attack path for Brock. If you were to go that defense path, I would say to pause it if you wish to and screenshot it. So that's the attack path. You can see we've gone and picked up attack at each of the nodes. There are a couple times when we have to choose between the two, but it's really just here, in which case I went the percentage attack buff because it is infinitely superior to the percentage healing one. So following the attack buff down, and as I said, I stopped at +18 for the final attack node. I didn't go to 19 or 20 there. If you are to go the defense and HP route, I'm just going to pop out of him and I'll open up... Alright, let's just go with Leon. So this is not Leon, this is Brock going a defense HP path. So what this looks like on the tree, it's pretty much the inverse of what we took with the attack route. So we're going each of the nodes that's got defense and HP as the preference. Again, the healing node is borderline useless, so we didn't pick it up. But otherwise, we are continuing down the side, which has got defense and HP. Now, here, if you are following this, you could make an argument to go to 19 and 20, because they both are defense and HP options. So that's just going to ultimately come down to a personal preference, if you think those emblems are worthwhile. So yeah, that's the defense HP route at the end of the day. So pause it if you wish, but otherwise, let's... I should delete that so I don't wreck it later. Let's head back and we can take a look at the rest of his special skill. So, Brock's special skill is titled Territory Claim, and at charge speed 50 and level 10 skill, it will deal 215% damage to the target and nearby enemies. It will then provide a +180 attack buff to all allies for the next 3 turns, and then dispel all removable buffs from the target and nearby enemies. So a couple things going on there. Let's start with the damage aspect as always. So damage itself, easy to calculate, lot of variability. So to simplify the comparison, I compare heroes based on their attack power, which is analogous to the final damage output anyway. So attack power is just their attack stat, 770, multiplied by the percentage in their special skill, and in the case of Brock, we can see he comes out with an attack power of 1,656, which, when normalized for his speed, comes out as a 166 attack power per tile. So yeah, number 5 of the 11 options, tied with Dapper Santa as well. I think Brock comes out a tiny bit ahead if you look at the decimals, but anyway, it doesn't really make a difference. 166 is the whole number. So yeah, that's where Brock falls in the scheme of things. You've got some of the best options there, Magma at 225, Bunraku 222, but he's definitely better than some of the other options like Zidane at 126 and Horato at 98. So middle of the pack. Similarly, for when you look at all the DOA 3 hitters in the game across all the elements, Brock comes out as number 33 of the 60 options. So very much maintaining that middle of the pack ranking, which I think is quite remarkable for him. When you look at his age, he is one of the oldest heroes that was added to the game beyond the vanilla ones. So Dapper Santa, Syntax, June, those guys are all newer than Brock, and Brock has actually stayed above them or equal to, like, above 50% of the DOA 3 heroes that have in the game, essentially. So quite a good hero in that regard as well. Yeah, so moving on from the damage output, we can take a look at his attack buff. So all allies get plus 180 attack for 3 turns. Now, right off the bat, we can see it's a static buff, which is unfortunate, right? It just means that it's not going to scale well with emblems or power creep or weapons. In fact, it actually will degenerate the effectiveness of this attack buff as those things come into the comparison. It will always just be 180. Now, 180 with 3 turns, it's a fairly standard number and duration for the static buff. We see the same on a lot of heroes like Bunraku, Logan, and such. There are ones that are worse. You've got 140s and 144 is another common number for an attack buff, but 180 is pretty standard. If we were to try to convert it to a percentage, which is difficult to do because it depends on what you're basing as the base attack stat. So if we look at Brock just on his own, he's got a 770 attack stat. So 180 is 20% buff on that base stat. If we were to give him a 5-star gun, that's roughly another 200 attack. So it's now 180 of 970. So that's just a 17% buff. If we looked more generally, so Brock has an inflated attack stat. So the average 5-star hero comes out as 708 attack, so it's a 25% buff on that. And then the average, the most recent 10 Neon City heroes, they come in with an average attack stat of 742, so it's a 24% attack buff. Now, notably, those don't have weapons included in them. Those are just the base attack stats. So generally, not generally, just exclusively, he doesn't give as big an attack buff as if you were doing a percentage-based one. So, the standard for a percentage base is 44% attack buff. Best case, Brock's coming in with 25%, or around about 20% when you start adding weapons in. Add emblems, goes down further. And then, percentage base, 44% is the standard. You can also get the Berserk style ones, which are like 131% or something ridiculous. And then, Brock's just a paltry 20%. So, static buffs are really hurt by the fact that there are percentage-based attack buffs in the game. So, that being said, though, 180 is still 20% better than nothing, right? So it's not that it's worthless, it's just that compared to some of the other options you can get, it is much worse off. So normally when I'm looking at attack buffs as well, I'd try to quantify how much of a damage improvement it is. But again, because it largely depends on what the hero's base attack stat is as to how much of a damage improvement is, it becomes quite complex. But if we take the scenario of just Brock with a 5-star gun and attack equipped, his attack goes up by 17%, as we mentioned earlier, but his damage is increased by roughly 23%. So it is still damage improvement. 23% is much better than 0%, right? It's worth grabbing. If nothing, it's better than nothing at the end of the day. The final part of his skill is the Dispel, so removes buffs from target and nearby enemies. Now, Dispel is a really, really great effect. It's got so many uses in the game. Basically, how it works is that any buffs that are on the afflicted heroes will just suddenly disappear. The exceptions to that are obviously buffs that say that this effect cannot be cleared. Those ones can't be cleared. And it also doesn't affect stacks, such as the Rock Band heroes, nor effects that have a no-end duration caveat to them, like we see with Blockbuster's Defense Down, or even max HP reduction. Those ones are not classed as dispellable ailments. In terms of his competitiveness, there's not really many AoE Dispellers in the game, which makes it a very valuable skill. There are, in fact, only 16 AoE Dispellers who are 5-star heroes. There's another 4 if you expand it to include 4-star heroes too. So ultimately, Brock is one of 20 Dispellers, AoE Dispellers, out of, I think there's like 100 and over 200 heroes. So very valuable as a skill, ultimately. The biggest downside really to the Dispel on Brock is that, like with pretty much every Dispeller in that options, it is only on the enemies that he actually hits, so targeting nearby, and it's also has the Dispel listed after the damage. So what this means is that counterattack or defense buffs, his damage is affected by those buffs first, so you are going to take the reflected damage from counterattack before you remove the buff. It's not an issue that's unique to Brock. In fact, there are only a handful of heroes that actually do a Dispel to enemies that they don't specifically hit with damage. Specifically, you've got Pantera, Thalia, Rex, Ryoko, and Variant Throttle. So 4 4-star heroes and Pantera, right? Everyone else, you need to hit and receive damage back before you do the Dispel. And I know Nomad is the exception to that, but Nomad's also a single target, not an AoE. So yeah, that's why I haven't included in there. So yeah, overall, Brock is actually a fairly versatile hero. His damage output has maintained its relevancy and stayed in the average range for a DOA 3 hitter, even in spite of his age. The attack buff itself, it's outclassed, yes, by percentage-based heroes, but as we highlighted, it is still a nice boost in damage, right? We're still getting a 20% damage improvement at the end of the day. Where Brock really shines, though, is with that AoE Dispel. This, ultimately, for me, is what I find most useful for him and makes him a great counter to so many heroes you see on defense teams that really rely on buffs to be effective. You've got heroes that create counterattack, like Ayumi, heroes with delayed damage, like Hypernova. You've got attack buffing, like Sapphire, Taunt, like we see on Shuffle or Variant Face-Off. There's so many more like buffs that we see on defense teams, and Brock is just a great counter to them. That Dispel is just such a versatile effect, and in my opinion, it's just not as widely available as it should be. I think that Dispel should be far more widely available and far more easily accessible on the 5-star arena than what it is. So yeah, for Brock's grading, I'm going to give him a B+ for his war and raid attacks. I think he is a very versatile hero. He's got a lot going for him, and he's got so many uses into so many different team setups that you can make. You can use him as part of an on-color stack. You can use him as an off-color Dispeller or an attack buffer. He's got a lot of uses in your war and raid attack situations. Similarly, for War Machines, I'm going to give him a B+. This is mostly on the back of his attack buff. It's not fantastic. Yes, you can also do it with weapon bonus. Not weapon bonuses, with combat items, but at the end of the day, this is free. So it is a worthwhile effect if you don't have someone better, like, say, Bunraku is probably a better option to him. In the eventing, I'm going to give him a B grade here. AoE 3 damage, it's not huge damage, and we do still pick up the attack buff, so he does have uses in the eventing, both in competition and completion. On the defense side of things, I just find him too squishy to be a very impactful hero on a defense team, so I'm going to give him a C- here. I'd say his best position is probably flank or wing, where you can hide him away and be a little bit protected, but he's not a great option, I don't think, for either of those two spots. In our 3 tournament settings, so Bloody Battle, we've got no healing or anything like that. He's not really affected by it, so I'm going to keep him at a B+ for attack and a C- for defense. The Buff Booster, again, he removes buffs, which makes him a very good, very useful, even more useful hero on the Buff Booster tournament. So I'm going to give him an A- for Buff Booster attack and a C grade for Buff Booster defense. And finally, on the Charge Attack tournament, he does go from speed 50 up to 65, so he does pick up an improvement there. So I'm going to give him an A- on Charge Tournament attack and a C grade for Charge Tournament defense. So overall, that comes out as being a B+ for Brock's overall attack grade and a C- for his overall defense grade. And that concludes the content for this review of Brock. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback on them, so please do drop down to the comments section and leave me a note. I try to read and respond as much as possible. If you did enjoy the content of this video and found it to be useful, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel and all of that, but also share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to other people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!